I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week we're going to be taking a look at the Best Director category, our first non-acting episode since the start of the series. Talk about my picks, who I think is ultimately going to get nominated, and then break down over the course of the video why I think they're going to get nominated. But if you're new to the series, welcome. What I do every single week is break down a different Oscar category, predict what I think is going to get nominated, and then give some possible contenders to ultimately help you with your own predictions. These are my predictions, these are what I think, but I want to help you with your predictions, so feel free to comment down below your own predictions. Let me know where you agree, disagree, or you introduced any stats that made you feel maybe more or less confident in your picks. I love to hear that stuff in the comments down below. Always really appreciate it. And as the series goes along, we're going to be doing not only these individual category videos, but then predictions for Critics' Choice and Golden Globes and reactions to SAG Awards and all that fun stuff, counting down to the Oscars. So subscribe to the channel so you just don't miss any of those videos as well. And if you want to hear my thoughts on an individual director, feel free to use the timestamps in the description below to jump around on this video. But without further ado, let's jump into things. Starting off with my predictions, my first one is going to be Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another. This is a pretty clear and confident prediction of mine, with a potential even clear and confident prediction to win this category. I'm not necessarily ready to go there to say he's definitely going to win, but he has a very good shot at winning. It definitely feels like maybe it's his year and his competition isn't as strong as maybe you would think. Because just like how we kind of group the acting categories into certain buckets, into certain categories, okay, they're going to nominate this type of performance or a biopic or things like that, we could also do that with the directing category. Because over the past few years, you can really kind of separate the directing winners into two categories. Either they were really connected to the success of their film and the film won Best Picture, so therefore the Best Director prize is also theirs, or they were kind of a legendary director who'd been nominated before, who'd made a bunch of great movies, and it was kind of their time to get recognition. So in the first example, it would be someone like a Sean Baker for Nora, or the Daniels for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Never been nominated before, but people love their movie so much that they kind of wanted to reward them as well. And there wasn't maybe a clear number two that was deserving of the win. Versus someone like a legendary director would be Chris Nolan for Oppenheimer, or Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog. Now, their movie doesn't always have to win Best Picture as well. Sometimes it's just about actually rewarding the director. Another example maybe could be like someone like a Damien Chazelle for La La Land, although that is a little bit different. Most of the time in the legendary category, it's people like Jane Campion or Christopher Nolan who had been nominated multiple times before. You can say Alfonso Cuarón in the Roma year. You could also say Alejandro Inarritu in the Revenant year. So there is kind of some history in these types of categories, and I think that Paul Thomas Anderson fits more in the latter, in the legendary director status. He's been nominated 11 times, 3 times for directing, so well-respected director, seen by a lot of people as one of the greats, and arguably made his best film yet here with One Battle After Another. Huge amount of critical support. I'm expecting a lot of Oscars as well, not only because historically he's done well. Licorice Pizza, his past movie, the movie before that, Phantom Thread, these movies all did very well in terms of Best Directing nominations, Best Picture nominations, so you would expect another critically acclaimed Paul Thomas Anderson movie to get nominated at the Oscars, just like his other ones did. That's kind of the obvious part, and the movie is one of the most critically acclaimed films of the year, so he's got all that kind of going for him. And then on the winning side of things, you could also say his main competition would be someone like a Chloé Zhao for Hamnet, who would almost be more in the other category, the kind of riding the success of the film if Hamnet were to win Best Picture. That being said, Chloé Zhao has also won this category before for Best Director, and we've seen the Academy be somewhat resistant to directors winning multiple times. I mean, Steven Spielberg lost out for The Fabelmans, which I thought he was the clear frontrunner that year. Even something like, you could say, Sam Mendes in the 1917 year. He had won back in 99 for American Beauty. They didn't give him the second one. They gave it to Bong Joon-ho. So they're maybe a little bit more hesitant with the directing prize to give it to someone twice. And Paul Thomas Anderson has never won before, and he does seem like a director, a legendary director, well respected, that it's kind of odd for him not to have a Best Director prize. So maybe he just wins for writing, and Chloé wins for director and picture, and there's a big race that we have. But I think also just the content of the film and the movie itself. I mean, it's almost 3 hours long, which gives him a lot of opportunities to kind of flex his ability. You have appreciation, I think, above the line with the actors. I think this is a movie that could have, 5, maybe even 6 acting nominations nominations, so a lot of support will come from the actors and the performances that he's able to bring. Of course, he's always been a great writer and the creativity of the script, but then also I think he's also leveled up and has an appreciation for the technical crafts in regards to this being ultimately an action movie. So he gets to show off his directorial flair, not only for his ability to write great characters and to get great performances, but also to have really engaging action sequences and use that kind of a budget that he was given to make kind of a big epic story. So there's kind of multiple levels of his appreciation in the directing, not only the action sequences, but also the performances, but also all those other kind of costume design and editing and score and all that kind of stuff. He does feel like he has full control of this movie. So I think it's a real shoe-in right now, at least for a nomination. Then my second prediction, I went with Chloé Zhao for Hamnet, who I already mentioned here. Now, gun to my head, if you were to tell me what movie is winning Best Picture today, I may say it's Hamnet. I really do think that since it's been picking up a lot of these kind of audience prizes at film festivals, of course it won the TIFF People's Choice Award. I've had a chance to see the movie, and I do think it is more emotionally affecting probably to more people than one battle after another, and we've seen emotion override kind of what should win time and time again. Just go and ask someone like Martin Scorsese losing Best Director for Raging Bull to Robert Redford for Ordinary People, which is a movie kind of about feelings and emotion rather than maybe necessarily technical craft. And yet Chloé Zhao can also still get the win here, and will definitely get nominated, I think, in part just because I really believe in the success of the movie as a strong Best Picture contender. But also because, let's not forget, Chloé Zhao has won this category before, just a few years ago in 2020 for Nomadland, and relatively easily. I think she also has a clear, distinct directorial flourish. This is not a movie that's invisibly directed. We've seen The Rider or Nomadland or Eternals. There is, that similar kind of a vibe of an emphasis on the score, on kind of handheld camera, naturalistic lighting, out in nature, this being a very woodsy movie in the same way. There's some great woodsy sequences in Eternals as well. There is some clear connections, and you can definitely see this has a directorial vision for sure. And even in the sense of if you see her in person and get to meet her, she has that kind sort of, spiritualistic, naturalistic vibe. So when you see the movie and then you see her, you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. That person made that movie. Stuff like that does matter when it comes to campaigning and kind of selling your directorial vision and your kind of maybe reasonings to win this prize. So at the end of the day, it's a movie that I think is a potential contender to win Best Picture, and you have the director who has a clear authorial kind of vision and that she's imprinted in the movie, and it's not just like a blandly directed movie. It is someone with a real vision, and especially if you've seen her other movies, which we know Academy members have because they gave Nomadland Best Director and Best Picture, they will recognize that in this work as well. So I think there's going to be even more appreciation for Chloé and her job here to at least get her a nomination. Then my third pick, I'm going to go with Jafar Panahi for It Was Just an Accident, which may be a surprise to some people that it's all the way up at number 3, but the more I thought about it, the more statistical analysis I did, everything really lined up for the fact that he has a very good shot at getting a nomination here. The only thing that would be necessarily holding him back would be if I'm completely wrong about It Was Just an Accident, that it gets no love critically, that it gets no love on the Best Picture side of things, but the path for it is very clear, and as someone who has seen it, I think he will get rewarded for this. There's just so many things going for him in his direction. So let's first talk about the stats rather than the content side of things, because I know not everyone has seen the movie, although it is starting to now become released in theaters more widely. And that the stats ultimately is connected to the Palme d'Or. So it Was Just an Accident won the Palme d'Or, the top prize of the Cannes Film Festival back in May, and of the last 5 Palme d'Or winners, 4 of them were nominated for Best Picture. All 4 of those movies that were nominated for Best Picture that won the Palme d'Or in the past 5 Best Palme winners, 4 of those also were nominated for Best Director. So if you win the Palme d'Or and you get nominated for Best Picture, you must always also get nominated for Best Director. That's a really high success rate. So the fact that just based on the fact that Jafar Panahi won the Palme d'Or here for It Was Just an Accident, that gives him a huge chance, almost an 80% chance based on recent history. And we've mentioned this before, but the international branch of the Academy has really grown within the past few years, in particular within the directing branch of the Academy. So if you don't know, it is actually the directing branch of the Academy, directors who vote on the nominations for the Best Director category, which is oftentimes why we see maybe more of an international influence because the makeup of that branch is a little bit more international. Clearly they have that kind of a taste, nominating 4 of the last 5 Palme winners. And International European Film Festival. They nominated here for Best Director at the Oscars. That's a huge kind of sign of support for someone like Jafar Panahi. And even irrespective of that, you can go to directors like Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest, which didn't win at Cannes, won the Grand Prix, but didn't win the Palme. He still got nominated. You can look back to other directors. Thomas Vinterberg for Another Round was nominated in 2020. That movie premiered at TIFF, but was supposed to premiere at Cannes when that festival was canceled because of COVID that year. So it was kind of like a Cannes type of a movie and probably would have won awards. Even someone like Ryusuke Hamaguchi, which Drive My Car did play at Cannes, and he got nominated for Best Director. It didn't win the Palme d'Or, sure, but it did win a screenplay prize at Cannes. So it just indicates to you that there's a clear alignment of the Cannes jury and international taste with what the director's branch of the Academy still appreciates. So why not Jafar Panahi? Critically acclaimed movie. You have a Palme d'Or winner. I've seen the movie. It's not something like a Titien, which is the one Palme d'Or winner that didn't get nominated. It's a lot more commercial, a lot more accessible. It's a talky movie about kind of morality, so I think it will appeal to a lot of different types of people. And then I haven't even mentioned really the content or the story and the narrative behind it. The fact that Jafar Panahi for a long time was banned from making films in Iran. He still kind of is, although not in an official sense. He's kind of just is not allowed to have film permits and things like that. He was imprisoned for making films and being kind of critical of the Iranian government. And this is a movie about former prisoners of war who were tortured. So there's just so many kind of personal connections, and we've seen the connection there with directors like Steven Spielberg getting nominated for The Fabelmans, or Alfonso Cuarón for Roma, or Kenneth Branagh for Belfast. We've seen these connections time and time again, where if you have a personal film, and this clearly, I think you can make the connections of this filmmaker was imprisoned and he's making this movie about former prisoners of war. You see that kind of personal connection, of course, and then just the challenges of making the movie itself, essentially being banned in your own country, and trying to make a movie within that country without filming permits and trying to be more secretive. There's a strong narrative to that as well. So it is someone that has kind of a point of view that is clearly a personal movie to him, a movie that is interesting and well written. It's not necessarily flashy in its directing in terms of crazy camera work and things like that, but it is a movie that I think will appeal to the taste of the Academy. We know that based on the Palme d'Or win, the international sensibilities, the well-respectedness of him as a director, and then you have that personal element, which is key and has been respected, because it's easier just to make that connection of, wow, this is really something connecting to him, and he really needed to make this, and he's a true artist, and he has a clear vision. Let's give him the kind of Best Director prize. So I think this is a movie that's a real contender in terms of getting nominated for Best Picture. I think it gets in for Best Director. I think it potentially even wins something like Best Screenplay. International film, it really is kind of more of a Drive My Car-esque path, maybe even something like Another Round-esque in terms of its dominance in terms of picture, director, screenplay. Probably not any acting awards just because it's more of an ensemble piece, but Jafar Panahi will be, I think, ultimately respected here for this film. Then my fourth pick, I went with Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value, and this is maybe where we see the biggest drop-off in terms of likelihood of getting nominated. I am somewhat confident, or pretty confident really, in those top three, and then 4, 5, 6, 7 can kind of all swap in or out, but I did pick ultimately Joachim, and I'll mention why. And that is because in the same way I want to over-index in terms of international films on the Best Picture side of things, I also want to do the same thing here for Best Director. We just mentioned with Jafar Panahi how the Academy, in particular the Directors Branch, has really been rewarding international directors. So why wouldn't they kind of over-index here and maybe nominate someone like a Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value? There are things that maybe go against him, but I'm ultimately going to argue why he should be nominated here. Of course, that international element. In the same way, I remember back, because we've been doing this now for 10 seasons, back in the Anatomy of a Fall Zone of Interest year, I predicted Joachim Trier and Jonathan Glazer. And a lot of people at the time were saying, well, it's either or, right? There's only going to be one international film slot, right? But then both of them got nominated. So if you're thinking about, is it Jafar Panahi or Trier? Are they really going to nominate two international directors? Well, they have in the past before. I mean, you can even say last year with Jacques Audiard with Emilia Perez, that was someone that was just a guarantee of getting nominated. I think we've gone past the fact that there potentially could be two international directors within the same category, that it's very people because it has happened before. And what's interesting about Joachim is that he is kind of, it does remind me this year of The Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall year, where his movie is almost kind of half international, half English. Because if you've seen the movie like I have, it is a movie that I think will resonate with every kind of member of the Academy because it's ultimately about family, but it is kind of a mix of both kind of groups, where you have the international members probably liking the movie, a lot of it which is in Norwegian and is set in Norway, but then you also have the American moviegoers, who I think will also have a strong connection to the movie because there are large parts of this movie which are spoken in English. You have American movie star in Elle Fanning, who has a prominent role within the movie. Even someone like Stellan Skarsgård has been in countless Hollywood films. You don't necessarily see him as like this unknown international actor. He's a legend that's been in a lot of movies. Even someone like Renate Reinsve, of course, speaks English perfectly and has been in movies like A Different Man recently, or the Apple series Presumed Innocent, so she's been popping up more in Hollywood type things. So this isn't someone, or these people aren't like foreign international Academy actors. There are kind of a familiarity, I think, to both American and international members of the Academy. Sentimental Value did premiere at Cannes and won the Grand Prix, which was the second prize, the runner-up prize, in the same way that in the Anatomy of a Fall Zone of Interest year, Anatomy of a Fall won the Palm, Justine Triet got nominated, but also Jonathan Glazer, who won the Grand Prix for the Zone of Interest, got nominated for Best Director as well. I think a similar thing will happen here. I think this is also a movie that will have strong support from actors, just the fact that I think we potentially have 4 acting nominations from this movie. They're going to be doing Q&As, campaigning for their own nominations. Who are they all going to bring up? Joachim and his kind of brilliance and his genius and his ability to work with actors. Now, there is some hesitance for me ultimately, just because this isn't a flashily directed movie. Oftentimes the winners of this award, even people who get nominated, are directors who have strong or flashy camera works or clear, distinct visual styles. I mean, we've seen directors like Aaron Sorkin for Trial of the Chicago 7, or Peter Farrelly for Green Book, or Mark McDonough for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, not get nominated in this category because it's mostly about people in rooms talking. And that's ultimately what Sentimental Value is, so I do have some concern that he won't be seen or hasn't done enough flashiness to get nominated as the director. And I'm also concerned that Sentimental Value, ever since coming to the public, has been maybe not as well appreciated as I thought it would be. I'm still a big fan of the film, and I do think that it is a contender in terms of getting nominated for Best Picture. But if there's any kind of split amongst the public reaction that we've seen, that could also kind of bleed over into the Academy, and maybe they see that similarly, where it's just not as impressive, or maybe it was too hyped up. Hard to say right now. So it's not necessarily a type of a film itself that always gets nominated. What I'm betting on is the strength of the film. I think it's going to get multiple acting nominations, writing and directing, and definitely picture. So if directing were to kind of come along with that, it would show an even stronger sign of support for the movie as an overall contender. If it's not an overall contender and it doesn't get maybe as many of those acting nominations as we think, he may fall out of my predictions here. So he is connected to the strength of the film ultimately. But even that being said, I do think even if the film slips a little bit, I won't be able to shake the fact that this movie is kind of this great balance of international director. Part of the movie's in English, so he has kind of American sensibilities there. He's made a lot of movies that have been respected internationally, so he's not this nobody, flash in the pan kind of a kid. We know the Academy likes him a little bit because his last movie, Worst Person in the World, did get nominated for Best Original Screenplay, so they do at least know of him. Of course, it is a jump to actually get into that directing category, but right now, betting on the international factor, betting on the success of this movie as the Best Picture contender, and resonating in particular with the Academy and kind of intellectual, prestigious side of the Academy. It makes sense maybe why the general public doesn't love this movie, but this movie I do think will appeal to Academy members. I mean, it's about a filmmaker and a family and kind of the struggles of art and family and love and things like that I think will totally appeal to Academy member voters. So ultimately, I do feel somewhat confident to entry or as a selection, but like I said, after that first 3, it really is kind of up in the air. Then my 5th prediction, I'm going to go with Ryan Coogler for Sinners. And I think Ryan's got a lot of things going for it, but ultimately the question you have to ask yourself is this movie Get Out, or is this movie Dune Part 2? That is to say, both movies, Dune Part 2 and Get Out, were released early in the year, came out with high acclaim. One of the directors got nominated in Jordan Peele, one of the directors didn't, in Denis Villeneuve. The question then becomes, which one is Sinners? Is Sinners going to be more of a technical play that gets a lot of production design, costume design nominations, and no acting nominations? If that's the case, I'd be more worried about Coogler as a potential directing nomination. Most of the directors usually have some sort of an acting nomination, so that would hurt his chances. But then maybe the reason why I ultimately have included him here is I think this is maybe more like a Get Out type phenomenon, where Sinners was not expected to be a huge box office success. It ultimately was. I think it was a huge sign of support for the original film. This was a director who has made a lot of franchise type movies, who bet on himself and said, I'm going to make an original big budgeted movie, and it's going to come out, it's going to make a lot of money, and that's exactly what happened, and he really made a real crowd pleasing type of a movie. But the truth of the matter is that it's always difficult for a movie that was released earlier on in the year to get enough recognition by the Academy to get nominated in Best Director, or even in Best Picture, because they've just seen so many movies since that. You almost have to remind them that, yes, this was a good movie, that yes, this was well made, and should be well respected in that sense. I mean, I think a clear example would be someone like a Denis Villeneuve, who gets nominated for the first Dune, which came out, I think, in September or October, whereas, Dune Part 2 releases in, April or March, and then he doesn't get nominated for that film, even though it's arguably better, the second one, and even more impressive directing. So sometimes that stuff does matter, which is why Coogler's down here in the 5th spot. But I do think they're going to reward and want to reward the originality factor of this film. The fact that he wrote this movie and also directed it, so it came from his head. The fact that if you're a member of the Academy and you want to see more Hollywood supporting original films, you'd want to support Ryan Coogler by nominating him as a director. I think there's a bit of a narrative in that sense too. I mean, let's not forget that the trades, including Variety, were pretty harsh, I think, on the Sinners box office coverage. It's making a lot of money, but it maybe isn't making enough money. So I think some people, that did rub people the wrong way, that a lot of filmmakers and things like that want to support other filmmakers. So the fact that he was kind of maybe thrown under the bus with some of the trade coverage, people will want to support him even more and go, no, this was a success. Not only did this make a lot of money, but it was one of the best movies of the year, and Ryan kind of crafted this really unique, interesting, original vision. Let's nominate him here. And also in the same way I talked about Paul Thomas Anderson, Coogler has this kind of good balance as well, where I think this is a movie that's going to get a lot of below-the-line nominations. Score, production design, costume design, being a period piece, has to kind of navigate all those elements, has to navigate the special effects and the gore of the film. But then also, this is a movie that potentially could get a couple of acting nominations, so it maybe has the acting support too, so people more see it as a cohesive film. That being said, if Michael B. Jordan doesn't get nominated and Delroy Lindo doesn't get nominated, then maybe it's more of the camp of Top Gun Maverick, Avatar, Dune Part 2, rather than a Get Out, for example. So then in that case, well, if it's more of a technical feat, do those people always get nominated for directing? Not necessarily, and then maybe Coogler slips out of that slot. We'll be interested to see, really. Sinners is the big question for me this award season. Is it really a potential top 3 contender, as some people see it as? Or is it a movie that was released early in the year, really well appreciated, but won't overcome those kind of horror trappings, those genre trappings that we know the Academy doesn't really appreciate? Is Coogler so well respected enough as a filmmaker to get in? Maybe. I mean, let's also not forget that Black Panther, Wakanda Forever almost won an acting prize and did win an Oscar. Same thing with Creed. Stallone almost won an acting prize. Black Panther was nominated for Best Director. He's been in the Oscar conversation for a long time. He's not a nobody. He will be well respected within the Academy. But he's still in that 5th slot because I think people are somewhat going to forget about the movie, and if people forget about the movie and how great someone like a Michael B. Jordan was in it, maybe they don't nominate him in that main category, and then maybe it's kind of pigeonholed because Warner Brothers is focused more so on one bell after another, and it's pigeonholed to more below-the-line type of nominations and seen as a kind of a technical blockbuster feat, but not like a personal original story. There are these narratives that can occur. Whether or not it's right or wrong, that's not for us to necessarily talk about. I'm just trying to predict and think further down the race. There's a couple of paths here. I'm really interested to see if it's going to go down the Dune Part 2 path or go down the Get Out path. I'm hoping the Get Out path, and will be appreciated in that sense, and Coogler will be respected enough and will appreciate enough to get nominated for Best Director for this kind of really unique original vision of a film. Okay, now let's talk about some possible contenders real quick because we went into deep dive into the main category. But that's why I do this. I love doing the deep dives and long videos. You get some people that do 5 minutes on one category. We do 30 minutes. We do a real kind of long deep dive each and every week on every single category. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of that. But now the possible contenders, my first one being Safdie for Marty Supreme. The reason why I don't have him in my predictions ultimately is because I haven't seen the film. So I'm going off the lead of other people, which leads me to be a little bit nervous. I'm going to have to kind of wait and see once I see the film myself. But based on what people say, there's a lot of signs going for him. The fact that this is a period piece, for as much as we talk about the international members of the Academy, a lot of the Academy members in the directing branch are still American. And when we see American directors get nominated, they're oftentimes getting nominated for period pieces. Steven Spielberg for The Fabelmans, mid-century America. Killers of the Flower Moon, Martin Scorsese, early 20th century America. James Mangold, mid-century America. So even something like 1917, of course, early century America. We see, oftentimes, if it's an American director making a movie about America in a period piece, there's a little bit extra appreciation for the directing, because not only do you have to have a great story and great, let's say, acting nominations, but also you have to do the period piece aspect of it. So that's production design and costume design and attention to detail there. So Marty Supreme is similarly a period story with a movie that potentially get multiple acting nominations. If that's the case, then maybe something like Safdie will be well appreciated. This is a movie based on what everyone has said. It has multiple locations, that it's kind of globe-trotting in that sense. So the early appreciation amongst directors from the fact that they shot outside and went to all these different locations, and there's this kind of breakneck pace and clear vision to the film, and there's probably nominations for editing and score as well. So if Marty Supreme also was, if it's being released late, and we've seen late released movies like Vice got Adam McKay a directing nomination, late released movies like 1917 got Sam Mendes a nomination. So this is a movie that really doesn't really screen to a lot of people until December, and is one of the best movies of the year. Academy members are going to be energized. That's the most recent movie they saw. They can't get it out of their head. And someone like Safdie maybe will be able to reap the success of that film and also then get nominated for director for Marty Supreme. I haven't seen the movie. It's all speculation at this point, but I'll be interested to see once I see it if he's a real contender, and if Marty Supreme, the way everyone has seen it, really does say it's a top 5 Best Picture contender. And if that's the case, then why not Safdie, right? Is Marty Supreme maybe going to have the benefit of being more recently released and therefore beat out a movie like Sinners, which was more earlier released? That can definitely happen. We'll be interested to see, though, once I see it. I can't comment too much just yet. And then my other possible contender, I went with Jon M for Wicked. And I think a lot of people underestimated Wicked the first time, and I don't want to do that this time. I do think that it is going to get nominated for Best Picture and will be a kind of top 5 Best Picture contender. And the cast was pretty vocal about the fact that he wasn't nominated the first time. The fact that he got all these nominations in acting and all these technical nominations, and the director who did all that stuff didn't get nominated. And they had a somewhat compelling point in that sense as well. And if this really is the kind of end to the Wicked story, they may want to finally appreciate Chu for the kind of last movie here rather than the first movie, for crafting this world, for developing this great franchise, for having all these kind of great technical elements of the CGI mixed with the reality and the production design, the costume design. And it is an appreciation, I think, from the Academy and amongst directors to do like this massive franchise with this big budget, to really execute that well and be appreciated. I think the Academy has a chance of rewarding that. And also, let's not forget that, Jon M was somewhat well respected for the first movie in terms of winning the Critics' Choice Award for Best Director, winning the National Board of Review for Best Director. And then also, Ace Eddie, Ace Eddie, he got a Lifetime Achievement Award. So, he was appreciated in the first one. He may get even more appreciated for the second one here as a way to kind of show their support for the entire franchise of it all. That being said, I think it's still going to be a little bit of a bias from the fact that he's never been nominated before. He's seen as kind of like a steady hand journeyman. Maybe someone that has like a clear, distinct vision with some of his films. Not all of his films have been masterpieces like a Paul Thomas Anderson, right? They haven't all been critically acclaimed, so they may not have that level of respect for him, or maybe he needs to prove it more times. Who knows what the case could be, but ultimately still a possible contender because the first movie, Wicked, was really well liked. He didn't get nominated. So I think the second movie is going to get really well liked and really well appreciated and a bunch of nominations. But if the first one was well appreciated and he didn't get in, why would the second one, which is going to be well appreciated, now ultimately get in? There's a chance, but he's still kind of on the outside looking in right now based on past precedent. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts for Best Director and your picks here. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.